Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melisa Liberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how.
Can you believe we're already at the second half of the year? We've turned the page and we're in the second half of this year. And I want to remind you that there's a very important business owner task on your list, even if you don't have it written down, and that is figuring out what your plan is for the second half of the year. Either building one if you don't have one, or optimizing and adjusting the one that you've already got in place. But this is the time to do it. And today's episode is going to be all about that so that you don't sabotage yourself in the second half of the year, so that you don't fall behind, so that you don't under-earn or feel underfulfilled. And that's what we're here for today. I'm going to walk you through the process of looking at this second half of the year from different vantage points and figuring out exactly what you want to do next so that you can take the most advantage of the second half of this year and finish it strong, even if what's happened in the first half of the year is not ideal for you or even terrible. Doesn't matter. Let's talk about what to do. Let's look at this as a blank slate and figure out what to do. And that's why we're here on this episode, number 278 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. My name is Melisa Liberman, and I am here to help you walk through this process. It's a bit of a workshop today, so if I were you, I would grab a pen and paper and sit down and follow along here as we go. If you're driving or walking your dog, don't worry, you can come back to this. We'll have really detailed show notes if you click down below where it says view full show notes, everything's documented for you, so you don't have to be taking notes. But come back and do the work if you're not here at your desk listening. All right, my friend, let's talk about what to do for the second half of the year to set yourself up for success, to finish the year strong, and to ultimately keep moving forward toward bringing your business goals to life. This is really important. This is a business task. You are a business owner. This is not a nice to have. This is not a, I'll do it if I have time. This is not a, I'll get to it next week activity. As a business owner, a successful business owner, an effective business owner, a skillful business owner, this is something that is part of your job. And think about it. If you worked in any company and you had a CEO that you reported to or were working under at some level in the organization, if they said to you, we'll just wing it the second half of the year because I'm really busy with client work, or we'll just wing it, hopefully everything comes together, or I didn't really have time to make a plan, or I didn't have time to decide what our priorities are, you would be pissed. You would lose faith in that leader. We don't want you to lose faith in yourself as a leader, so please do not skip this. It's super important. All right, let's talk about the agenda for today. First, I'll share with you the companion resource that goes with this episode. You're going to want to go download it because it helps you to have a structure for what we're talking about here today and can be a really repeatable, just out-of-the-box way of managing your quarterly planning. And ultimately, you can do two of them to equal half the year, right? So go download that. I'll tell you what it is here in a second. Then we're going to talk about just a baseline for you as we start the second half, and then identify where you're at based on that baseline and what to do based on where you're at, including an action plan for you and the mindset that goes around with it. And we'll wrap it up with putting this episode into action. All right, let's first talk about that companion resource. I highly recommend this. Obviously, I wrote it, so I recommend it. But in this case, this is something that is really important, and I would highly recommend that you go download it. It's the Quarterly Plan for Consultants. So, of course, there's thousands of plans out there. You can make up your own. You're smart enough to make up a plan, of course. But I recommend downloading this quarterly plan because I built it specifically for independent consultants, and I built it specifically for the types of challenges we face as independent consultants. And it's super specialized to you, what you do as a business owner, and helping you to build out a plan that is comprehensive and doesn't miss any parts, because I built this out of the years. What is it? Oh gosh, almost 14 years, actually beyond 14 years of being an independent myself and having worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of independent consultants. All right, you can go find that at IC Quarter, the two letters IC for independent consultant and .com, and download it for free. All right, now let's dive into this topic, planning for the second half of the year. Where are you now? Let's just get clear. You've got to start with asking yourself that question. And it's going to be some flavor of these 5 answers. I don't know. Honestly, for many consultants, I don't know is truly the answer. Now listen, we both know that you should know, but we'll address that here in a minute. Okay, you might not know. All right, that's fine. Let's deal with wherever you're at. I'm not going to yell at you too much over that. Number 2, it might be that you don't have a target. So you don't have a set of goals. We're talking about where are you at right now with respect to your goals. You might not know where you're at with respect to the goals. You might not have set any goals, or you forgot what they are. So that's the second bucket. You either don't have any goals or targets, or you forgot what they were. Number 3, you might be behind. So you set a revenue goal, let's say of 500K, and you're only at 150, you're behind. If you want to evenly create the revenue, if you might be on target, or you might be ahead. Let's take each one of these separately to help you build out that plan for the second half of the year, so you don't write off the second half of the year, so you don't just let whatever happens, so you don't get so stuck in doing the day-to-day that you have to do that you just let this unfold and therefore not take control of it and therefore leave money on the table. We don't want that for you. So let's start off with doing the math. This is so important and so simple and so obvious, but for so many of us, we don't do it, right? We go off of what we think, what our impression is, where we think we're at, not the truth. And I tell you this and make it a very specific step here as you're looking at your plan for the second half of the year based on where you're at right now. Do the math as step 1. Do the math as step 1 because this is a step that consultants often skip over. I'll give you an example. I was talking with a consultant the other day. I asked them, where are they at? They're like, I'm behind. And they said it in a very direct, very confident, very matter-of-fact way. Like, I could have believed them very easily. A logical person, it would be very justified to have believed what they said based on the way they said it. So I said, okay, great, you're behind. Let's talk more about what that is. So I started asking more questions, and then I started noticing some cracks in the answers, right? And so I'm like, let's just pull up QuickBooks and figure it out. And so then we started going through, and it didn't take long to realize, oh, well, I didn't count that. That's in accounts receivable. I don't have the cash yet. But I booked this new contract. It hasn't started yet. Like, all these different things started coming up. And we realized that this consultant, once we went through the actual math, now, while they don't have the cash in hand, they're actually ahead of their plan, ahead of their goal, I should say. They're ahead of their goal based on looking at cash on hand, revenue generated but not yet paid, and new contracts closed but not yet started. They're ahead. Now, when you think you're behind and you're feeling bad about it, you're going to make so many different decisions than when you're actually ahead of the curve and you've got revenue queued up. You're just not counting for whatever reason. That impacts your decision making significantly. The way you spend your time, potentially negotiation on proposals when you think you're behind, you're more likely to make bigger concessions. I mean, think about it. If you do not know the math, and it's not just about what you have in your bank. It's not even necessarily what you have in QuickBooks if you're using QuickBooks or whatever, you're using that's similar to that. Because a lot of times we don't put our accounts receivable in those systems or contracts signed and not started, right? For so many consultants, I find that we don't actually know the math. So then we're guessing. Don't guess. Do not guess. Likely you're off. I just gave you one example. I could give you a million, so many examples. Not a million, of course, but I could give you so many examples, including my own, where you're off. Go do the math. Number one, as you're thinking about planning for the second half of the year, based on where, are you on track? Are you behind? Are you ahead? Do you not know? Based on wherever you're at, we need to base it off of reality, of the facts, not the guesses. Okay, that was first. Do the math. Now, let's go through the different scenarios, right? Because as you think about planning for the second half of the year and addressing whatever scenario you're in, whether it's behind, ahead, don't know, all of those things, we need to address them one by one. So now that you've done the math, even if you paused the episode and went and did it, now let's figure out what to do based on where you're at. So first, and let me be clear, we're talking about your targets, right? So where are you at right now? You just did that math. Now we're talking about how does that compare to your target, to your goals? You might be ahead. You might be behind. You might be right on track. You might not know. So let's start off with I don't know. Based on my math, I actually don't know how I am against my target. This is because you don't remember what your target or you didn't set it. This is your job. This is your job to know. This isn't a hobby. This isn't you just self-generating a paycheck. This is a company. You started a company. Whether you plan to do it or not, you started a company. So if you don't know what your target was, because we just did the math, right? Then this is the next step. Figure out why you don't know. It's interesting to me because I tell people before I meet with them, let's say someone is reaching out to me, they want to talk about potentially working together in private coaching. And so I tell them before the meeting, I'm going to ask you what your revenue goal is. I'm going to ask you how you're doing against the revenue goal. I'm going to ask you, and I give them a bunch of other questions that I am going to ask them. So then I ask them, what's your revenue goal? I don't know. Or I didn't set, I don't know. I did it, can't remember. Or I didn't do one. Or, I love this one, just give me a second. And then they're like fumbling through spreadsheets to find the answer. Now listen, I've done all of these things. So I'm not like pointing the finger here that you're a bad person or have done something wrong. I've done all of this stuff. What I am saying is you should know the number, right? Like off the top of your head. Like that number should be so ingrained because you've built a relationship with it, because you know what it is, because you think about it all the time, because you're a business owner who set a target and the target matters. So if you don't know what the target was, if you don't know what the goal was, you want to go figure that out. Why don't you know? What is going on that you don't know? Did you set it and then you just literally don't want to face it and so you just put it on some spreadsheet somewhere and never looked at it again? We've got to address this. And the mindset here, if you don't know what your target was that you set 6 months ago-ish, the mindset here that goes with this is like, this is my job. This is my job. I need to know my numbers. I've got to know my numbers. The CEO that I worked with when I was in corporate, when I was helping to build a startup company and all of the professional services division within that, like he knew, it was insane. He's incredibly successful, startup after startup after startup. Now he runs a venture fund. That was one of his superpowers. Like you could ask him anything. He knew the numbers. This is your job. We're not talking about a bunch of complex set of numbers here. It's just, what is your revenue target this year? How does that break down? What's the number you're working toward this month? What's the number that you need in your pipeline based on your close rate to support that goal? Like those are very simple numbers, right? But if you're in the camp of I don't know, first of all, you're not alone. And number two, you've got to know. Like that's just that. So write that down. Your task one for the second half of the year is to go figure out what your target is and then make sure you never forget it again. All right. Now, that's if you don't know. Now, the second scenario is you don't have the goal, right? So I sent you to go find out what your goal is if you don't know what it is. And maybe you realize I never set one. Or maybe you just know I never set one. Listen, at the end of the day, I can say this to you again, but your job is to have a goal. I said this when we started the episode. Why would you ever want to work with a CEO and a leader who didn't set any goals for the organization? We'll just see what happens. Hope for the best. You would never want to work with someone like that. Why are you doing that to yourself? We're building our employer of choice here. Don't do that to yourself. Become the leader who sets a goal and inspires the people in the company, which is you, to you and yourself, to hit that goal and even exceed it and celebrate that. So, I'm stating the obvious, you need the goal. But beyond that, let's talk about why you don't have a goal if you don't. If you're in this bucket, I don't have the goal, didn't set one, why not? The reason for almost all of the time boils down to that you cannot handle the emotional side of running a business. You are emotionally immature in this case, right? Someone said this to me when I first started doing some coach like a coach certification. I was pissed. Like, what do you mean I'm emotionally immature? That's so rude. But at the end of the day, in this case, you are. And I say this to you not to make you mad, but to say, listen, this is an area, a gap you've got that you want to fill. You've got to get to the place where you can handle the emotional side of running a business. This business is hard to run in a lot of ways. It's an incredible business model. I would never spend all of my professional life and time and blood, sweat, and tears focus all on independent consulting if I didn't believe that. I believe that to the core. At the same time, even though it is an amazing business model, it's hard. It's an emotional situation for a lot of different reasons, most of which we wear every single hat in our business because we're solo. So when I say that you're emotionally immature in this area, it's okay. You just have not yet built up the skills, the emotional skills to handle this part of running your business. So we need to fill that. That's all. I say it to you in that way, that you're emotionally immature in this way, which I was also, and sometimes still am. Not, it is what it is. But I say it to you that way because it's incredibly important. What I mean by this is if you're not setting goals, it's because you don't want to feel like you're a failure. You don't want to feel disappointed. You don't want to feel something, overwhelmed or scared, like, oh, I don't know if I can make this work. Of course you don't want to feel those things. But the answer is 110% not avoiding the goals to avoid the emotions. The answer is set the goals, set the targets, and figure out how to handle the emotions, manage the emotions, redirect the emotions, process the emotions, whatever it is. That's the superpower. And believe me, I was in the same boat. I would not set a goal. I did not want to feel those things. I did not want to deal with any of that. I wanted to feel happy, like if I created something, which then strangely, I never felt happy because I didn't have a goal. And so it never felt like I achieved, it was never good enough. This does not end well when you don't have a goal. You think you're doing yourself a favor. Like I've talked to so many people that are like, it backfires on me. I put too much pressure on myself. Well, guess what? I can almost 99.9% of the time guarantee that it's backfiring in some other way for you. You're not doing yourself a service by avoiding having a goal. I can write 29 episodes about this exact topic. Please set a goal. Set one now. Pause this. Write down a goal for the second half of the year. 20K months, however you want to do it, but write it down and then commit to it. Don't get into the first bucket we just talked about, which is like goal amnesia. Get yourself to the place where you set it and it's on a sticky note on your computer. It's written down everywhere. It's on the bathroom mirror, everywhere. And then learn to manage the emotional side of this. Set the goal and fill the skill gap of being able to handle the emotions, the roller coaster, the up and down. The mindset that goes with that action plan is something along the lines of I'm becoming a business owner who's capable of handling the emotional roller coaster. I don't avoid doing important things in my business because I'm afraid of feeling fill in the blank. Like I'm becoming the business owner who's capable of handling the emotional ups and downs. That's what you want to be focused on if you don't have a goal. Okay, now let's move on. Again, we're here thinking about the second half of the year. We're here helping you know how are you going to tackle that second attack the second half of the year and make it happen. Finish the year having accomplished more than you ever imagined was possible for yourself. So you might be in the position where you're behind, where you've set targets, you've set goals. We looked them up and you did the math, and we come to the conclusion that you're behind. And be careful when you make this conclusion. Of course, some people are behind, and it's pretty straightforward. But be careful when you make this conclusion that you've done the math. I'll remind you of that. Do the math. Give yourself credit for everything. That's another issue I find all the time. Oh, that doesn't count. This doesn't count. I signed that contract last year. It doesn't count. This is a different type of work. It doesn't count. Like all of these, it doesn't count. Do not do that. Count everything. I was working with someone the other day. I may have shared this with you on a prior episode a couple weeks ago, but I'll repeat it because it's so important. They had ignored half of their revenue, if not a little bit more than half of their revenue, because it was more staff augmentation type of work. And ultimately, that's not the type of work they want to be doing. So they literally didn't count it. And so now they're thinking, oh, I'm so far behind on my revenue. And then, of course, you know what happens from that: desperation, second guessing, wondering if they should go back to corporate, all of the things that are not productive versus saying, you know what? I'm actually ahead of my revenue goal. Now, how am I going to handle this? So let me say this again. Double check that you are behind. If you are behind, I implore you, do not change the goal. If you do, you're leaving a huge opportunity on the table. And it's not about the money. Of course, part of it is about the money, right? If you've got this goal and you're behind, the opportunity is, of course, making up the money side of it. But I would argue even more importantly, when you don't focus on doing everything you can this year to hit the goal, even though you have half a year left and you're behind, you're leaving opportunity on the table. And that opportunity is all about becoming the business owner who sets goals and follows through with them to the bitter end for the learnings as much as for the outcome. Let's say you set a goal of 20K per month or 25K per month, and you've been generating 10K more consistently. Rather than just changing the goal to 10K, you already know how to create 10K a month. You've been doing it. What good does that do you? And does you no good? Instead, you keep the goal at 25K per month and you start figuring out, okay, what am I going to adjust? How am I going to shift this to hit the 25K per month? And guess what? If you keep hitting 10K per month and nothing shifts for the rest of the year, like you were going to do that anyway. What happens if you then up it to 15 because you kept the goal or you even start hitting the goal? You're getting yourself closer, but don't change the goal. Set the goal. Even if you're starting right this moment, set the goal and follow it through to the end. And then we'll revisit for next year. The other thing that if you change the goal, what you're missing out on is that learning to set goals even though you're afraid of failing, even though you don't want to feel disappointed, even though you don't want to feel frustrated, like whatever it is. When you change your goal and make it quote unquote more realistic, you're losing out on all of that. Don't do that for yourself. And then ask yourself, like keep the goal and ask yourself, what's my biggest opportunity to generate the revenue and fill in the gap? What's my biggest opportunity to start hitting my 25K per month goal? Answer that question. Don't just slide back to, oh, well, this is reality, so I'm going to put the goal there. There's no benefit to that. When you ask yourself, what's my biggest opportunity to generate this revenue and fill in the revenue gap? You can start uncovering answers to these questions like, oh, and when I look at my process where I've got the biggest opportunity right now is in booking conversations. I need to be having more conversations with potential clients or people who can connect me to potential clients. Or maybe you look at what's going on and you say, oh, my biggest opportunity is I'm having a lot of conversations, but I need to turn those into opportunities. That's so much more valuable to answer than, oh, what should I change my goal to make it feel better? And then on the mental side, if you're behind, tell yourself this is what happens in businesses. It's more about how I recover and adjust as opposed to hitting the number. If you're behind, that is a thing, right? We've all been in businesses working for companies where we weren't hitting numbers. This is what happens. Don't make it about yourself or personal. Okay, let's say you're ahead. So you've assessed the year to date and you're ahead of target. Phenomenal. If you're listening to this and you're frustrated because you're not ahead, just know that some people are and use this as an example that you can be too. Okay, so if you're someone who's ahead of your target, you can choose a few things. Let's talk about them. You can increase your goal. Sometimes I talk to people and they say, oh, I don't want to increase my goal. It's going to sabotage myself, or I'm going to feel too much pressure. I'm just going to keep it how it is. Again, let me refer you back to the conversation we just had about handling your emotions. It might be very valuable to say, listen, I know I set a goal of 20K per month, but now I'm going to double it. I'm going to put it at 40K a month. I'm going to get really curious. What would that look like? How could I create 40K a month without working more? Not because you're pressuring yourself or not because you're trying to overwork or not because you want, like for no other reason than like the emotional learnings, the business owner mindset that you can be building from this. And of course, the extra revenue would be nice too, right? The problem solving that comes through it. But listen, I'm also telling you, you might want to increase your goal because you might have sandbagged that number. I used to do that in corporate all the time. I'm like, I'm going to set a number that I know I can hit. So my bonus is attached to it. We do these things for valid reasons, right? I don't want to be fired because I set an aggressive goal that was never realistic in the first place. We do all of this stuff in corporate. You're not in corporate anymore. Set goals based on what's valuable to you as a business owner, not how you used to do it in corporate to keep your job and to make sure you maximize your bonus and that your whole team is on track too, right? So I recommend that if you're ahead, look at this, figure out what is the benefit of me increasing my goal. I probably sandbagged it. Let me shift it and give myself a challenge to double it and not work anymore. And what are the, consequences of that? You could also keep the goal. If you're ahead, keep your goal as it is, and then set another, like a layer on top of that, which is making it more sustainable. Okay, I'm going to keep my goal how it is, but I'm going to land more of my ideal type of work. I'm going to keep my goal as it is, but I'm going to have more control over the timing of when I'm starting contracts. I'm going to keep my goal as it is, but I'm going to focus on making it simpler to generate demand for my offerings. Like that's another way you could tackle that. And the mental side of this is I will say, you created this. It is not luck. And the question you want to be asking yourself is, how can I create more without it feeling hard or like I'm making a sacrifice? If you're ahead, give yourself the credit and build upon it. All right, now let's say you're on track. So, of course, you've done the math, you have a target, you looked it up or you remember it, and you're about on track. This is where I'll give you a warning. If you're someone who's just on track, I don't want to say just, that's great news, right? But if you're just kind of there, right there on track, not behind, not ahead, but just on track, this is where you could really sabotage yourself if you're not careful. The reason why is we either get a little bit apathetic. We're like, oh, I'm good. So we get a little too comfortable, or we start freaking out that it's not sustainable and we end up sabotaging ourselves either way. So don't do that. And let's talk about why not, how not to. The first is the action plan. Like you can either keep your goal and remind yourself, like, it's enough. I'm doing enough. This is steady. This is repeatable. Versus like, oh no, the house of cards could fall at any minute. So you could keep it and focus on the mental side of this is like, this is my new norm. This happens without, just on autopilot. That's one way you could focus. If you're someone who's constantly worried about like, is this going to fall apart at any minute? That might be really valuable for you. That might be your growth edge. The other way you could handle this if you're on track is to shift to what I call the compound goal. There's an episode a little ways back about this. The compound goal is like, I'm going to create my revenue and I'm going to land ideal clients. Maybe you're landing clients that aren't as ideal, even though you're hitting the revenue. Or you might set a goal of, I'm going to create the revenue. I'm going to keep creating the revenue. So I'm hitting my goal overall this year and I'm going to take more time off. Like you can decide what that compound goal is. And then the third option for you is to increase your goal. You've got to decide if you're on track, which of those options make the most sense for you based on where your growth opportunities are. You want to continue what's been working and fully commit to achieving the rest of your goal. Don't get too comfortable. And the mental side of this is it's solid. It's inevitable I'm going to hit the rest of my year's goal. I'm making it inevitable. I'm making it my new norm. I'm figuring out how to achieve what I want and this other thing too, that I don't have to choose between them, like the amount of time you're working and the revenue, or the types of clients you're working on and the revenue. All right, so that's if you're on track. As we wrap up today's episode, I encourage you to put in place what we talked about today. You want to know where you are, do the math. Where are you at right now based on the first half of the year? How does that compare to the goal that you set? If you didn't set a goal, you'll make one. And then you decide what to do. You commit to what it is that you want to achieve in the second half of the year. You build the plan upon it. And I would highly recommend it includes some of that emotional part as well, like building a relationship with this goal. Figure out what mindset will be best to fuel your goal and then execute it. Finish this second half of the year knowing that you have not only achieved your goals, but you've also grown as a business owner. And you're setting yourself up for next year to start off from such a different vantage point, from such a different starting point, from such a different way of thinking about yourself and the way that you work, from that much stronger, more mature, more successful business owner way of thinking. All right, my friend, I will remind you one last time to go download that quarterly plan, and that will also give you a more detailed framework that we dove in today on today's episode. And you can find that at IC for Independent Consultant, the 2 letters, ICquarterlyplan.com. And I'll see you again next week. Take care.
Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melisaliberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.